The first item coming up is the Morning View Road proposal. I'll turn that over to Mr. Feuerborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just very briefly, wanted to give the council an informational-only item because Morning View has approached both staff, and I know that they have talked with elements of a proposal that they are hoping to eventually be able to bring before the entire council. And I know that they have also made overtures to the mayor and the mayor pro tem to give them the same presentation. So once some of the council members are getting information and I also have the information, I kind of feel, I start to get nervous unless everybody has the same information and the same status update. So I just wanted to put this on. Again, it is informational only at this point. It is very early days in this particular proposal, if you will. The Morning View folks have come to staff to propose the possibility of updating their roads to city standards and then having the city take over the ownership and the repair and maintenance of those roads in the future after they have done that. The initial proposal that they have made to us for discussion purposes is that they would be responsible for bringing the roads up to city standards. There has been, they are in the process with some staff help of exploring what sorts of revenue sources may be available to them, CDBG grants, et cetera, that might be out there to help either offset or defray at least some of the costs that would be associated with the road upgrade. They have begun exploration. They have done core samples on their roads out there, which have been turned into Mr. Crass. Mr. Crass has been able to give them a scope of services as to what would be involved in actually bringing those up to standards. I think he has described the roads as in pretty good shape at this point. Much thicker than we actually thought that they were. We thought one of the things that might be involved is actually bringing up some list standards. He has given them, they have requested and he has given them the names of several of the road contractors that we use. I am sure that at this point they are out there continuing their exploration into both the revenue sources and what it would actually cost to bring the roads up. So right now, that is the homework, if you will, is kind of on their desk, not ours. And I just felt that because some of the council had been approached, as I said, I should update you on the current status of that particular project. And that would conclude staff report on this item, sir.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions? Do we have a representative from Morning View that has a short statement that might want to represent the group tonight on this particular topic? Yep, here we go.
Yeah, I know. It'll be short. My name is Tom Dix. I'm the Morning View Homeowners Association president, and we started exploring this a few months back with Howard Finke. He's on the board. He's a director for us on the board, and we've been looking at this, trying to come up with an answer because of the cost to the HOA. Every year, the roads become more and more expensive for us to keep up with, roads and the curbing. So we decided to try for the city, and we're working with the city at present in talking to try to bring this thing up to city code, wherever we're at with them on it. Mike has the report now, and he's talked back with Howard. We're working on that, and we're working to look at possibly a block grant to come up with the money to bring the roads up to par with it, so that at that time, if we can get the city to take them over, it will take a financial relief off of us with them on, basically.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Hopefully you'll be successful in your endeavors, and we'll talk again soon.
Fine.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions of staff at this time on this? Mr. Kellogg?
I'm just kind of curious, how far are the discussions taken into? Is there any proposed language or that staff is looking at bringing forth before the council, before consideration or serious meats and potatoes discussion?
No, because they have not actually come forward with a formalized proposal at all for us to even begin digesting.
Okay.
It's just informational at this point on.
And that will hold off my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the water and sewer rates.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Ms. Watson to begin this report, and I might be diving in at a couple of different locations on her.
Thank you, sir. Those of you that are new to council, just want to give you a few highlights. Each year, staff does an annual review of the water and sewer rate studies. That is comprised of looking at each one of the components individually. Your first sheet in your packet is the assumptions and facts that were utilized to create the recommended rate. The recommendation this year is to decrease the water rate and increase the sewer rate. This actually has a net effect of 0. For the majority of our utility customers have both water and sewer, but it will affect customers that have just one. That being said, also included in your packet is the survey of the surrounding cities. And once again, proud to say that Raymore is still the lowest combined rates charged in Cass County. And of the surrounding cities, we are second, only by Lee Summit, which has a considerably larger household to be able to divide each per gallon rate charged. Also included in our recommendation this year, staff work. Yes, you may.
Would also point out that Lee Summit is a first pump and we are a second pump, and the rates go up as far as what we are being charged relative to each of those.
Before I jump ahead to the schedule of fees, I am handing out a brief overview of the way we actually bill versus how the information is read, because I know that has been a concern of several of the council members. At the very top, I have listed out just brief summaries of the section code that authorizes us to do the billing. And then at the bottom, in the middle, I have our current practice of how we actually, what are the dates. I went ahead and utilized the August billing as my example, because those are actual dates that we're currently in. So if you notice, Zone 1 and 2 are billed together, and Zones 3 and 4 are billed together. And based on where you are in the city, your read date is one of those days. On Zone 1, it would be somewhere between July 13th and 20th, depending on where you're actually at in that zone. But then from there on, everything is exact for each one of the customers. So if you were read on July 13th, then you would have been billed on August 8th, and it's due on September 7th. We've initiated those reminder phone calls, so the reminder phone call would have happened on September 5th. If it's not paid by September 7th, on the morning of September 8th, we process penalties, and then we immediately bill the next bill. But still based on that one, on September 11th, we send out the yellow letter, which is the 10-day shut-off notice. We try to match that up on the Monday prior to the shut-off for the following Wednesday, so that it's not a real long timeframe between when it's being shut off versus when we're notifying. As you remember, we chose to do the shut-offs to stay on a Wednesday instead of doing the immediate 10 days following the due date, so that the shut-offs were not always changing. So that's why sometimes you're going to see a couple days from the actual penalty date versus the day we might mail the notification for shut-off. And then, again, we would have a phone call notification on September 18th of the disconnect day for September 20th. So just briefly, want to remind you that what that means is if your bill was read on July 13th, that would be usage from June 14th to July 13th, roughly. And you would not actually be shut off for that service until September 20th if you had not paid your bill. The last section that has kind of the color-coded areas is the insert that if we were actually doing it by code rather than a 30-day cycle of billing and due date, that bill would have actually been due and payable on the day we billed it, August 8th. Based on code, a past due is 20 days following that day. So it would have been considered past due on August 28th, and then it would have also been penalized on August 28th. And then code says if it remains past due and unpaid 10 days after the due date, service is disconnected. So based on all that information, the actual disconnect date based on the way code is written is September 7th. So now I'll turn that one over to Jim.
So the essence of this is a commodity, and or if you're talking about the water, or a service, if you're talking about the sewer, is used but not disconnected for approximately a quarter of a year for somebody who doesn't pay, because they would end their usage on the July 13th date through July 20th and would not be shut off until September 20th. So we thought we'd clarify that. One of the items, in addition to some of the other changes that we're recommending to the fee schedule, is to codify what we're actually doing, because while a good number and a growing number of folks are actually seeing that bill when it comes out online because they're paying online and they get the notification that it's out there, I think it would be good to, even though it's in favor of the customer, I think it would be good to have the code reflect what we're actually doing, and have the code say we're giving them 30 days to reflect that. And so we do, at this point, we would be open to any council input relative to this schedule. Or
anybody have any questions? Mr. Barber?
Thank you. I got a couple comments and a question. First of all, this was really nice. Thanks for putting that together, and thanks for doing the survey. That's really helpful too. My comment is, maybe it's question two, could you help me with my cell phone bill? Because I don't, this is more information than I've ever gotten from AT&T, so great job. Second, I notice now when I pay my bill through my online banking, it's now an electronic transfer instead of a check. Is that something the city has done, or is that my bank? Because I used to go online and pay that way. I know when you guys got the bill or the payment, but now I notice with my online banking, it's an electronic transfer.
It could be one or the other. About a year ago, we did start signing contracts with some of the clearinghouses. I was always opposed to signing those contracts because it allowed them to deposit money in, but it also allowed them to take it out without my permission. So I refused to sign those contracts until about a year ago when I was able to get the language in that I wanted it. So we do now get quite a few payments that are electronic. So if you just recently had that happen, I would say it was probably your bank switched to that clearinghouse.
Mr. Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd have to echo what Mr. Barber just said, too. Thanks for the information. It's great to know this and have it, because we do get questions on this. One of the main ones comes to not a question, but it's always clarified by me that our water is so expensive. So thank you for saying that. I smiled when you said that, and I always will. So the things that maybe not on this, but I'll ask this question. First of all, when a service is shut off on Wednesday, what is the time frame, or what is the time frame for those folks, those citizens, to pay their bill and get their water turned on as soon as possible that day or possibly the next day? What's the time frame that we're looking at there?
Can I preempt? And I want to preempt with one thing. I have to tell you, and I don't know if you all are getting the calls, but for the new program that we have instituted, where you see the phone call, the late notice phone call that's coming out, and the bill due phone call, those have been incredibly helpful and obviously very well received as just a little nudge to folks who are doing that, and an incredibly inexpensive program that's going to pay for itself. So.
On the day of shut-off, my staff has actually changed their office hours, and we are available until 7 p.m. So anytime they call our line, they're getting us directly. It's also indicated on the shut-off notice that that is the case. We do start shutting off at 8:30 in the morning, but payment has to be made by the 8 o'clock in the morning, because this between the 8 and 8:30 is actually producing that list and sending it out with the guys that shut off for us. Depending on how many there are, it can take up until noon to actually shut off. So all shut-offs are made before turn-ons are made, and then the turn-ons are made in the order that we receive the payment. So as we have an electronic spreadsheet, and as we're taking the payments, each one of our customer service representatives are going in and inserting in the line the customer they talked with. I will say, in a medical emergency, we'll take priority. We will call the guy in the field. That is the only time we will call him in the field. He'll stop what he's doing, and he will immediately turn back on. We do require medical emergency situations to be on file in our office by their doctor. If they're stating it that day, we're going to take care of it, but we expect immediate follow-up. And if they don't, then they're not treated as medical emergency, and they're a normal customer from then on.
Okay.
I hesitate to say this, but the police non-emergency line is always available, and they have the on-call. So if you did not get home until after 7 and were not aware that your water was shut off, they always still have that option.
Well, and that's good for us to know as a representative, because when they call us, we now know that we can call them and get that immediacy right now. That's information I didn't have before, so I really appreciate that. The other question that I would have, and here's the problem of enticing people to move to Raymore that and I love them moving here. I get a lot of, the complaints I get is the deposit is so high, and then the deposit's maintained for, I believe, 2 years. Is that correct? 5 years.
Can we use your statement as a segue, sir? Because that's the second part of our recommendation tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, as long as that gets answered so I can answer it when I get asked.
Thank you, sir. The final page that you had in your packet is a schedule of fees. Staff worked with the Public Works Department as well as the Community Development Department to ensure we did a complete overhaul of this section. That's why you see quite a bit of red lines and mark out lines. As you all know, we are in the process of switching over to a complete census meter. We no longer are allowing the commercial developers to purchase their meters and install. They get them from us. So that's where the major change is happening here. That is the current cost plus anticipated inflation for the cost of each one of those meters that could potentially be installed. So if a resident or a developer were coming in based on their building permit and the type of meter that was being installed, those would be the fees that they would be charged. The hydrant meters, as you can see, that's quite a bit of a jump, but I'll be honest with you, that has not been touched in many, many years. And the value that's there is the actual cost of the meter. So if someone were to return a damaged meter or not returning at all, that gives us the opportunity to be able to replace it at no cost to the city. The deposits, as Mr. Fairborn was talking about, we are making a recommendation based on the fact that we do have separate customers that have just one service, not both. So we are recommending to change all of our deposits across the board, decrease the residential to $50 for water and $50 for sewer, and as well as all of the rest of the lines. I know it seems like a pretty significant decrease for commercial, but quite frankly, we really do not have a problem with commercial accounts. So having the same level of deposit as a residential, I feel is sufficient. At the same time, you will also see right above that a disconnected deposit charge. We are currently doing this, but I thought inserting it in the schedule of fees outlines it a lot better, that this is our practice. If somebody is disconnected and they do not have the appropriate level of deposit, or they have had their deposit returned, they're charged an additional deposit. So this is the schedule of fees that I am proposing to bring forward next week to make the rate changes and all of these other meter changes. And then we are doing a review of code, and when we get to that section, I would like to propose to decrease the 60 months. I want to remind you that the way that is written is no penalties in 60 months. So that means no mistakes for 5 years. Very few people get that back.
Anybody else?
The time frame that we're looking at to make the proposal to you all, we're doing a review of what would capture the most folks in being able to get the deposit back. 24 to 36 months seems to be a good period of time to be placed onto there. 5 years is excessive. For good customers, they will have proven themselves up in the 24-month period. Beyond that, into the 36-month period, if items are happening, they're very explainable lapses. Somebody goes out of town and forgets the bill, and things happen. So in that 24 to 36 kind of seems to be the line of demarcation for folks as far as chronic, things are going to happen. And so we will be proposing a significant decrease in the deposit time frame. When we do that, it would be a threefold process. One, we would be implementing it for new customers, but we have customers on the books. So customers who have met the 24 will be, and if they have paid more, because you'll remember that there are some customers out there whose deposit is only $25 because this has been changed in frequency. So people who have more of a deposit than the 100 in total would be refunded that money in the days after the council would approve this. Folks who have less on deposit, who are at the 25 range, would not be assessed. We would be doing a review of all of those. Most of those folks, especially if they're in the 25, the 24 month is gonna capture them, so they're gonna get refunded anyway. So there'll be a significant credited, yeah, I keep using that term, thank you. They will be credited against their bill, so they'll, in essence, get the money back.
Thank you. I want to commend you guys for doing that. I know, but many of us have received the same email from the same person, and he's been very tenacious about it, but also very comprehensive in his own studies about what other like communities do. So I appreciate that your recommendations are going to be a little more compelling to the community and new community members coming in, so they don't feel like they're coming into a city that is not sympathetic to their issues. So I do really appreciate you guys doing that. I'm glad we're moving in that direction, and I think it's very fair as well. Did you have something, John?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Also want to say thank you for putting all this together. This is nice to have all this in front of us. I think it's great that we are recommending that we credit people automatically without them asking. I wanted to verify a couple things on here. So on the other sheet, on the due and payable date, that's the date the bill is sent, the August 8th. Okay. And our current practice is the bottom line, or our current practice, we're actually doing the middle line right now? Is what we're
The current
currently doing?
practice is the middle.
Okay.
When we set it in the system, we tell it the bill date and the due date. So we do actually physically set that due date rather
Okay.
than it being due and payable. I'm not sure how long, but that has been the standing practice, and it's never been discussed on changing it. So our recommendation is to, when we're doing this code review, is to change code review to match practice, because as long as we stay in this tighter time frame, I feel a lot more confident about decreasing the deposit, because the deposit is twofold. It puts that commitment to the customer so that they're not moving in, moving out on us, but it also is technically should cover about a month's worth of usage. So if we stay within the timeframes we're using, they're not getting multiple bills, so that by the time we're shutting them off, they're already in the next cycle. That got confusing.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to verify just one quick thing to also, so on the calls they're getting, those are robocalls, or are they actual staff calling the customers on the?
No, they are robocalls. They are set using the shut-off module that if they still have that value still due at that time, all of those accounts that have a phone number attached to them get that phone call.
And they're leaving messages also if they don't answer the phone?
They do, and it also leaves a text message if you've signed up for text messaging.
Thank you very much.
So if you want text messaging, you have to sign up for that.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going to go with that, too. And I thank you. I remember when you first rolled this out, I did get one of those text messages, and I thought that was wonderful. I'll digress from there. It just, I guess I'm kind of curious. I don't I don't want to belabor, but I've got to ask. What, the penalties are for late is 10% of the bill, am I correct? Or can you explain the penalties that go along with that? And then I'm going to ask what the disconnect or the reconnect fee, penalty fee is also when a person gets disconnected. Can you explain that to me?
The penalty is 10% of the current bill. And your disconnect, if you reach that time frame, is a $50 disconnection fee. And then if they do make arrangements in the evening to have their water turned back on, but their payment is not made by the following morning, and they're disconnected again, it's a second fee, and it's $75. Very rarely do we have to charge that.
Anyone else on the water and sewer?
Just to clarify your statement, is it a reconnection fee for $50?
Shorthand, we always call it a disconnect fee, but it is actually a reconnection fee.
So it's the 10% and then the reconnection fee?
The 10% is actually a penalty.
Penalty, okay.
The reconnection fee is for just that, to send the person out.
Okay. There's nothing else? Anybody? Did you have something?
If nobody has any changes to it, we will be bringing this to the council. Because there are sewer changes on this, state statute requires that that be a public hearing. So this will be a public hearing next week, sir.
All right, thank you. Next item is the FY 2018 budget. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. Budget has been presented to the council last month. As we had indicated at all of the regular council work sessions up until the end of this fiscal year and the final passage of the budget, each work session has an agenda item slot for the council to discuss anything relative to the budget that they would like to bring up. That includes staff reports, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moorhead.
I'd like to go ahead and make the inaugural inclusion on our list. Subject to our budget meeting that we had here in Mr. Fearborn's presentation, there were a number of items listed as expansion items on page 29 of his memo. Mr. Fearborn did say the first 4 items he would like them removed. I think the phrase was he did not understand them. So at his request, I think I will leave those off. But if I would like all the items on there included, minus the first 4, that would have an impact of $79,230 in light of the listed $90,289.
Sure, Mr. Fearborn. I know you had some.
Could I make comment to 2 of those, sir?
Are they 2 of the 4 excluded or 2 of the ones I added?
2 of the ones you've added.
Okay, yes, sir.
We, on the item for ED, which is a $25,000 item, when Mr. Tapp and I were discussing that item, we were actually attempting to bookmark those funds. We need 2 years of the retail strategy program that's currently in place for that to be effective. So if you would like to include it, we can, but I would request that rather than it going directly into the ED department's budget for next year where it could be lost funds, that it go into the restricted revenue fund to be used in the following year, but earmarked for that.
Then I would ask that the list, minus the first 4 items, plus the ED portion of $54,230 be listed, and then the ED item be placed in the restricted funds of $25,000.
Very good, sir.
There's actually a second one to be bookmarked that he wants to talk about.
And this one could be for, this is a nice to have, but we absolutely definitely don't need it now because we found a vehicle. You'll remember that one of the items that is proposed is to create a new maintenance worker 1 position. But we actually have a vehicle for that person, but when we presented that item, it was to also give them a utility vehicle. but we have one sitting out there right now that he could use. Now, it would be nice to have another vehicle over there just in case we needed it, and it certainly provides us with another cul-de-sac snowplow, I suppose, Mike. I just throw that out. If you didn't want to spend it, but it sure would be a nice to have. I didn't want to mislead the council into anything if.
You're testing me on my math in my head on all these. And I apologize. So based on what you asked, Mr. Kress, do you want the car or not?
We'd like to have it, but I don't want to mislead the council into thinking this is a need to have.
Okay.
Just an idea, what if we list that separately from the others? It looks like the way she's listing them is as a chunk. If we list that separately,
Fair
then
enough.
we could take it away if we have something else that seems more pressing.
Right on. Okay, then I would ask the expansion items listed on page 29, minus the first 4 items, plus the ED item and the vehicle be removed, leaving a balance of $29,230, with an addition to the restricted fund for the ED program of $25,000, and then a separate general revenue fund item for the vehicle added back in for $25,000.
Thank you, sir.
Pretty good.
Mr. Fairborn, do you have any other
That is all, sir.
I like that.
I hope to be able to bring the IT items to you when I understand them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, really. Mr. Kellogg.
I want to ask staff if $25,000, you threw something out there that got my attention, and I don't care if you want it or that you don't want it. It's what I want. I want the cul-de-sacs plowed as quickly as we can, and if that's going to be used for that, dude, I'm there. Would $25,000 be enough? I know that I can't buy a truck for $25,000 to plow my own driveway, but I don't get the same discounts that a municipality does. Is that enough to do what I would expect that vehicle to do? If it's going to be relied on for an extra vehicle to do cul-de-sacs for the public works and that, would that be enough?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I thank you, Mr. Moorhead, for putting it back in there. Wherever you did, I don't care, but thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman. There you are.
Thank you, sir.
I knew you were down there.
Kind of hide in the corner a little bit. I've stated before, and I'll state again, I think that this year in particular is a year to be prudent. We're blessed with a pretty good amount of unreserved fund balance. We also want to remember that we have 3 major GeoBond projects going on at this time. In the parks realm, being the completion of the RAC, TB Hanna Station, and Hawk Ridge. We've heard not only within our own group, but within external groups, commercial groups that have come to us, that construction costs continue to grow, sometimes within a 30-day period. I would request that we move $600,000 out of unreserved fund balance into a restricted revenue account specifically for possible cost overruns on the GeoBond projects. Those were promises that our citizens voted overwhelmingly on. Almost 80% of the vote went to those projects. They want to see those finished. They have to be finished in a quality fashion, and we need to make sure that staff has appropriate funds if we run into cost overruns and or need to change a few things in there.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Are we making any modifications up there as we speak? Go ahead. 600,000 to the unrestricted. Sorry, I was fixing my minus. Oh, okay. Yeah, so kind of trying to get a. Yeah, she's still thinking about what Derek said. Mr. Holman.
I do have a question for Mr. Fairborn. If we, I assume we put that money, if we move that money into restricted revenue for those projects, and then the projects are complete and we have a substantial amount left over, can that be returned to unreserved fund balance? That's what I thought. Just
absolutely
double checking so we can pull it out if we need to. It's basically we're saving up for the child's college fund at this point, and then if we need to, we can rate it later should we need to.
That is exactly right.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
That's a good point.
I would like to say that you'll be getting about $599,000 back, but we had a contractor's discussion today, and construction costs are bleak.
And I know since taking office a year and a half ago, and in my talks with you previous, I had mentioned annexation in our planning efforts toward that. I know that you and Mr. Carteret have been meeting and discussing potential educational programs, thought processes to reapproach that particular topic. You and I had discussed potential for a set aside of $75,000 specifically designed for the potential of bringing in consultants or working with others in the field that would allow us to put together a more comprehensive plan. Is that still something that you'd see value in?
Absolutely. I think most of the council has expressed a significant interest in the possibility of an annexation effort in the future, sir. Those don't, there are a lot of nuances to it. Getting the program ready to get to the court for their review, the informational campaign that the city would need to engage in. We learned a lot of very important lessons in the last effort that we had, and one of those is the importance of the front end work that gets done. And we've kind of discussed with some of the council members kind of a single-pronged approach that Mr. Carteret and I would like to undertake with the mayor's aid in approaching some of those folks to get feedback from them in a targeted area, and then using that information to either go ahead and bring them in if they'd like to come in voluntarily, or use that information in a future campaign. But all of that to get a cohesive campaign together would cost a significant amount of money for those two areas. First, getting everything ready, and then the actual informational campaign itself, which is you all who can remember the first effort, there are significant issues associated with that as well. So $75,000 into the restricted revenue fund specifically for that, with again the ability if
we don't reach the point of needing it, it can always be similar to the other amount that we were talking about.
Exactly.
Okay. I would really like to see that. Mr. Holman?
You said that was for future possible annexation efforts. Was that, I missed part of it, sir? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else? I know this is the first time we've talked about it tonight. It'll be on the agenda for a couple of more work sessions prior to the proposal of the overall budget.
That is correct.
So, did you have something, John?
I do. Maybe I'm early in this, but I would like to see if we could set aside $15,000 or $20,000 to expedite rollout of the branding of Raymore with signage, specifically in front of the city hall here and the other exits out here, and the other signs. Basically, I'd like to see if we could spend some money on every city limit sign in Raymore and bring it up with this new logo on it.
Opposed to that? If not, did you have a question, Kevin?
Maybe a question, maybe a comment. Would that be more appropriate to put that inside of a departmental budget that does that instead of, and with the explicit explanation, that's what that is for? That's the intent of that? Would that be the communications department? Would that be public works department that would undertake that? And would we increase their budget for that particular earmarked item?
That is actually how we do all of these, sir. Yeah, we assign them to a specific department, but these are funds that the budget is currently balanced, and so these are funds that would come from that available fund balance that is there for you to use on one-time type projects like this. And so each of these that is up there eventually has to make its way into a departmental budget. I would see this, because we're dealing with two different types of signage, I would see this as coming under the umbrella of the communications department, but Mr. Eakey would work with Mr. Crass on those elements that are associated with the city limit signs, which are kind of like street signs, kind of not. We'd probably use the opportunity to, as we have done in the past, do this in the dead of night and update our city population. Mike has a specific crew that does that for us.
Well, I support it, and I thank you, very good. I just wonder if it's enough, and but need to start somewhere. And like, if staff comes back and says that is enough, let me be on the record that I'm supportive even at that point too. So but again, I still don't think we can buy a truck for $25,000 to plow snow. So, but that's all I got. Thanks.
Yeah, that's right. Mr. Holman, did you have something?
I support Mr. Barron's idea. What I might suggest, we could certainly earmark the amount that he suggested, but ask that request to go out to the Communications and Public Works Department for them to give us some feedback. We've got some time before this goes to the final hopper to give us, here's what we think it'll take, and here's what we think the cost might be, so we can kind of get that a little closer to what it'll actually take to get it done.
Okay.
And I should have mentioned, I did kind of bounce this off city staff over a month ago, and $15,000 was a budget that they gave me, and that's why I said 20. So, yeah.
And hopefully we'll come in at 8. I was actually really surprised that the signage that the council member had asked for was, we have a municipal center sign down on Broadmoor West. We have the municipal center sign that's lighted out on 58. We have a municipal center sign on Broadmoor East. We have 4 directional signs in the front and back parking lots at the entrances here, all of which still have the old logo on them and could be updated a little bit. And then the 15,000 we hoped would cover all of those, cover a duplicate sign to what is on Broadmoor West out on Broadmoor East on the corner, because somehow it got left out of the mix. And then having the same signage for the Public Works area over in Recreational Park. And then, of course, the city limit signs. So all of that together, I am certain that the 20 will be able to cover, unless we got dramatically different quotes than the preliminary quotes that we've had. And since there's no construction involved in this, maybe we can actually come in on a budget.
Anyone else have anything to propose tonight? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is the strategic plan.
Thank you, sir. Staff had actually indicated to the council that we give you a little bit of time to digest it, because you'd only had it for a couple of days at the last mark. It would be staff's intention after tonight, if there are any changes or if there are no changes, one way or the other, to bring this to the council for your acceptance. This one has, because it is a strategic plan for the council, I see the resolution on this being more acceptance and adopting it than I see it as being a resolution noting that there is a strategic plan out there. This kind of rises to a little bit of a different level, because it will lead to further action steps by staff. Wanted to present that to you as an informational item, see if you had any further comments you would like to make to it, and that concludes staff report, sir.
Anybody have any questions of staff on the strategic plan? Great. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is appointments to boards and commissions. I had asked Mr. Fearborn to put together a list of, here, I'll start with you, Sonia, you can pass those down, of the appointments that are coming up for the Arts Commission, Board of Adjustment, Planning and Zoning Commission, Tax Increment Financing Commission, and Tree Board. The names that I've gone over with staff and talked to several of the individuals, and so have the responsible department heads over those particular boards and commissions. I've talked to them. Many are willing to serve again, and others are going to be newly appointed. Those are highlighted in the yellow of the appointments that I've had. If anyone has, rather than go through names tonight, if anybody has any questions about any of those, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about it at a later time or prior to that night when those appointments come up, or we can discuss it now. I know that we've been a little sheepish about discussing names in these, but I guess we'll move forward if everything's okay. Mr. Holmes?
I just had a question. The document you provided that lists the individual boards, and then on the far left side, there are individuals' names who are highlighted, those people that are leaving those boards, and that's who you would be replacing. Is that the intent? I just want to make sure I'm reading it right.
Well, the only ones that are actually up, the ones that are, most of them are being reappointed. There is, as you see, the vacant seat under tax increment financing has been vacated by Mr. Holzman. That is an at-large position, and I'm going with that Ward 3 representative there at the recommendation of staff. And the only other one is on planning and zoning. That is a Ward 2 replacement.
So the names that aren't highlighted in the left column are actually the ones that are leaving for some reason. Is that correct?
Well, other than planning and zoning, it was just a choice because those were those that I had screened through there, and I went with that second choice. The first one is just the term is up. Which ones are you talking about?
Well, are these people leaving that board, or is this person, this is highlighted, this is not? I see, okay. This person is leaving.
If I may, there's a list of people that were applicants that were you were
They're all on
considering.
this sheet of
Right,
paper.
they were all the applicants,
all
and the
applicants.
highlighted ones are the ones that are being selected, correct?
Correct, that's correct, sir.
Because you explained it to me very well last week, so I thought I would
Well, thank you.
help you out there, because you did it well last week.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. Gosh, we got through all of that pretty quick. I was surprised that we got through it that fast. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring before the board? Mr. Fearborn?
And I did remind them before the meeting that it is the Ward 2 council members who will be handling the farmers market. I'm sure if anybody has any tips from the first 2 weeks, you can, after the meeting, let them know. It's been a real pleasure to staff. The interaction has led to some really interesting questions that the council members have passed on to staff from those. So from staff's perspective, I sure hope the council considers doing this again next year, and maybe every other month, picking every other month, and we can highly advertise that for you. Staff would also, in a couple of weeks, we'll be meeting with the Ward 4 members in your ward meeting. With your okay, I would like to have Mr. Eakey there for the beginning of that meeting so we can discuss elements of the town hall meeting. And then if you all are okay with that, at one of the October meetings, sharing what we're hoping is a standardized communication strategy for those town hall meetings as far as getting the information out to folks within the ward, et cetera. As we've kind of gone along, it's been spurts and starts, but I think if we keep this up and all of these new lines of communication, which is great, we should have a clear-cut process that we're handing to you all to make those as successful as possible. That concludes staff, others, sir.
And before we conclude the meeting, the festival committee wanted to remind everybody that Thursday evening at 6:30 is the opening ceremony at the flag pole there in Memorial Park. So if you can be present for that, they would really like to have you there. And then the parade's, of course, Saturday morning, and festival for the next 3 nights there, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yes?
And so on the parade note, we have
Yes.
plenty of room for everybody, families and council members to walk. If you have your blue shirt, wear your blue shirt. Otherwise, is there anything else we need to know or think about for Saturday?
Just that lineup begins at 8 a.m.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Starts at 9, right?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right. If there's not, Mr. Kellogg.
I just want to chime in on that. The last 2 weeks, I've been working quite a bit at work. Like tonight, I didn't get out of there until about 5 o'clock. It's possible I could be working Saturday, so I may not be there. I just want you folks to know that, you know, I could be tied up with work.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, we're done.